Alright, back again, Luke here. And as you can see in front of you, today we have a quite rusty project that we're going to try and see if we can get working. As you can see by the case, if we spin it around here, this has seen much better days. This is a Konami M2 board, and it's quite rare, a very uncommon board. The M2 hardware is basically similar to a 3DO. Now, you've probably seen a lot of arcade hardware being related to other systems. For example, the Naomi hardware is related to the Dreamcast. The Triforce is like the GameCube. The 357 hardware is like PS3. 246 is like PS2. So each one of these different hardware systems that have been made were revolving around one of the game consoles that you probably have in your living room. And once again, this one is based around the 3DO with a little bit more memory, more RAM in it, so it produces a much clearer, much stronger picture. And I don't know if you can see here or not, but there is a DVD drive that's located right next to this board. Now, this is something that I recently picked up, and I kind of bought it as a project that I wanted to try and get working because, like I said, this system and this hardware here is quite rare, and there's only a few, like maybe a handful of games that were made for it. So what we're going to do is we're going to try and take this apart. Obviously, this thing has been sitting in the rain, and it's been sitting outside for a very long time, so there's no telling what kind of damage has been done to it. You can see on the side here, this is where a couple of the pinouts are for different extensions. There's a fan on the side there, and in the front, this is where our JAMA connector and dip switches go. But what we're going to do is take the cover off, and I'll let you guys take a look at the inside, and we'll go from there. So, see you in a little bit. Alright, so now as you can see here, we've got the cover off, and you can see that the rust and grime has all gotten in here on the motherboard. You'll notice around these RAM chips, mostly, there's quite a bit of corrosion going on, especially up towards the front, and around the CPU, etc. in the back here. The disk drive has definitely seen better days. It looks like the serial number and the code here has been kind of washed away over the years. We've got a lot of dirt and grime here on the front, and in the back of our ribbon cables, and you can see the rust goes down basically to the bottom. So the first thing we're going to do is try and strip this thing down and check the connections, try and get anything reflowed that we're going to have to reflow done, probably with these RAM chips, and snap it back together, get the drive working, hopefully cleaned up a little bit, see if we can get this thing to power on. I don't know if I mentioned this in the first part or not, but actually there is no power. This thing does not do anything, and there's a lot of reason why, as you can see here. But we're not going to give up on it. We're going to try and see what we can do and hopefully get this thing running, because there are a few good games. Now, this system is the Battle Tryst system. And some of these different 3DO hardware systems here for the M2 were designated for a specific game. This one just particularly had Battle Tryst in it. And some of the main differences are just like the RAM chips or some of the other components on the boards, which is what separates them from some of the other systems like the, Beat Mania or Drum Mania kind of boards as well. So what we'll do is we'll strip this thing down and go from there. But as you can see, we've got our work cut out for us just a little bit. But we'll see what we can do. Kind of hope for the best here. But I'll get on this and we'll be back in a little bit. Alright, so as you can see here, we've kind of stripped off the components, and you'll notice there's a lot of rust that has gotten through the bottom of this chassis here. And it's gotten all around this side as well. So what we're going to have to do is basically, before we start doing any work on the other components, we're going to have to clean this bottom part up. Main reason why is because this is where all the components are going to go back. So if we don't have this nice and clean, it's not going to really help out in the long run. It'll probably make things worse, especially if rust or anything like that gets on the inside or this kind of weakens. This is going to cause a lot of trouble in the future. So we're going to strip this down even more before we start doing any work on the boards, just to try and make sure that we have a strong base here. And then we'll go ahead and take a look at the disk drive. We'll have to crack that open. And then this 3-stack motherboard, as you can see, it has a couple of daughter boards on the bottom of it. we'll have to take that apart and see what we can do with those, and then get on the actual repair part for the circuitry. So what I'm going to do first is try and scrub this up. I think I'm going to use some sandpaper, probably just to file the rust off of it. And then from there, probably add some oil or so to try and lubricate it and keep it a little bit better condition for the future. So what I'll do is I'll get on this. This is going to be a lot of work. I might do the top part here later, just so we can have a strong foundation. I'll do that. So I'll be back in a little bit. Okay, so as you can see, we're outside here, and I've got the board laid out. I've already started sanding some of the rust off, you can see there, but there's still a lot more work to do. Hopefully we'll be able to get most of the rust off of this, the surface rust, and as much as we can, just to try and prevent it from rusting as quickly, I suppose, compared to what it looks like right now. But I'll get on that, try and get this thing cleaned up, and then I'll show you guys what it looks like after we get done. So, I'll be back in a little bit. Alright, so after a bit of some elbow grease, you can see it's getting a lot better. There's still some areas where just haven't filed it down enough, but looking much better than that rusty mess it was before. There's a lot of dust out here from this, so I'll keep going at this, hopefully get this thing polished up a little bit more, and then we'll go ahead and start working on the other components. So I'll be back in a little bit. Alright, so as you can see here, we've got our base plate cleaned up, shined up a little bit more. I've got some oil here to kind of coat it and protect the bare metal, but this is the top side and the bottom side. So not perfect, but looking a lot better than what it did before, and this should give us a good base or a good foundation here to put the rest of our components on and not have to worry about here for at least a little while. But next thing we'll do is probably try and tackle the big guy over here and see what we can do about that. That's going to be a lot of work, but we'll try that next, and I'll see you guys in a little bit. Alright, so as you guys can see here, here's a bit of a better look. There are some areas of concern on this board, especially like the discoloration in a lot of the chips and the areas around the chips. Some of these look kind of rusted to the point where they could fall off at any moment, which isn't a good thing. The bottom part of the board not looking much better here, so I suppose the first thing we'll have to do is try and remove as much of this dirt and grime as we can. Obviously, like I mentioned before, this thing looks like it's been sitting out in the rain for a very long time. So we'll see what we can do with it. There's quite a lot of components here to try and clean up, but I'll get on that, and I'll see you guys in a little bit. Okay, so as you can see here, after disassembling it a little bit further, I found this nasty surprise by Konami. This is a programmable IC or programmable chip here, which has a lithium battery in it. So it's a timekeeping nightmare. What this basically does is it keeps some part of code on the system, whether it's like character information, or it could be scores, it could be code that will allow the system to turn on or not. And when these things go dead, they're just pretty much a nightmare to put back in. You have to reprogram them, find one that has a good enough battery on it, that has some life left in it, or you have to grind off the top, remove the old battery, put in a new one. These things are just horrible. So nonetheless, I'm sure that's one of the issues, but I'm gonna have to pull that thing out and at least socket it so I can try and test different stuff with that. The other thing here is the BIOS. I remove this, and you can see that has been sitting in there and pretty much corroding for who knows how long, and the socket is just as bad, so I'm gonna wind up removing that socket. I'll put a new one in its place, and then we'll just kind of see if that helps out a little bit more. But we have to polish that up, remove that socket, and remove this one and put it in a socket, and then go from there and see if we can test this thing out. I've got most of it kind of scrubbed up or cleaned up a little bit and checked out, but we'll try and get the other stuff done here, and then we'll give it a shot. Well, actually, no, we'll have to move on to the CD drive. But we'll get on that, and I'll see you guys in a little bit. Okay, so what I've done is I've socketed the timekeeper here, and this should allow me to be able to remove it and replace it when I need to, especially when I go to test this thing out again, which I'm probably going to have to remove, but that makes it a lot easier. I can just pop it out and then go from there. But the next big thing here is going to be removing this socket and putting a new one in there, so I'll get on that and be back in a little bit. Okay, so we've got our new shiny socket in place, and we'll go ahead and put this mask ROM back in, and then we'll go ahead and see about reassembling this and then working on the CD drive. But so far things are kind of going together a little bit. I can figure out what's gonna probably take place, especially with this timekeeper. Probably gonna come up with some sort of error that will prohibit the machine from starting, but still better than not having anything show up on screen, so we'll just kind of hope for the best and go from there. But I'll get this plugged back in and then we'll go on to the next step. See you guys in a bit. Alright, so as you can see here, we've got the drive opened up and there is some corrosion going on the bottom of this, and I'm guessing that's just probably from the water seeping through and then getting stuck on the inside here, and it's on the bottom of the board. I don't know exactly how much damage it's caused. Hopefully it's just surface, but yeah, as you can see, it has been rusting there for quite some time. But I think one of the things that did protect this a little bit is the top part here has some plastic on it, as well as this, which actually I just pushed through, and very paper thin. So, but we'll try and see what we can do here about polishing up the drive and then giving that a go. The internals, at least the laser mechanism, looks decent, which is quite amazing considering all of the rain and whatnot that has been falling on it. But we'll see what we can do, try and take this apart a little bit more, and then go from there. So I'll see you guys here in a little bit. Okay, so we're back outside again. What we're going to do is take the bottom of the disk drive and the plate that holds the disk drive in place, and we'll try and get rid of some of this rust, as we don't want it coming back. But the disk drive itself, the bottom of it looks pretty decent, so we might just pop this thing back together and see what it does. So the next part here is just to clean this rust off on both sides and then put it back together and see how it goes. See you guys in a little bit. Alright, so once again you can see here we've got the bottom of our drive plate and our drive, and we've got those all scrubbed up and not looking too bad. I think what we'll do next is try and get the drive put back together and then bolt it into place, and then we'll give this thing a test run and see if it changes or if it does anything. But we'll get on that and I'll see you guys in a little bit. Alright, so we've got this thing all kind of connected back up here. No telling what it's going to do, but at least it looks a lot better. So I think we've got everything situated here, but we'll flip the old switch and see if we get anything. Like I said, this thing wasn't doing much before, so we can kind of only hope that it'll do something a little bit more. So I kill this light here and hope for the best. Let's see. Well, there's a blink. Whoa, there we go. Okay. Not bad. Sounds like the drive's doing something. Trying to read. Oh, hardware error. Okay. Well, at least it's doing something. Not sure exactly what's going on, but at least it did something, you know. It came up with a hardware error though. So I'm guessing that that might be the chip that was having some issues on the bottom. I'm not totally sure, but oh geez, what is that? You go blank again? Oh. This thing's doing all sorts of crazy stuff, but maybe it's a reset. I think it's probably an automatic reset. Well, I mean, even though it's coming up with a, you know, hardware error, it's still kind of working. Just have to figure out what that is. I think that might be related to that dead timekeeper, if I'm not mistaken. But that fan is really something. Lots of vibration coming from that. But at least it's getting video, which is kind of cool. Yeah, maybe also it's not putting out enough voltage. Maybe I should try and crank that up a little bit. But we'll get back on this and see what we can do. It seems to just be running a loop and then trying to correct itself, but As you can see, the disk drive just keeps going back and forth and trying to spin up, but just a hardware error, so I don't know. This time it didn't spin up, so yeah, it could be a number of things, I suppose. I guess I'll play around with it a little bit more and see what we get, but it's showing a little bit of life, which is good. But yeah, I'll play around with this a little bit, and I'll catch you guys here in a little bit. As you can see, once again, trying to spin up. You can hear it trying to read. But yeah, so I'll get on that and I'll talk to you guys in a little bit. Alright, so as you can see here, we've got the machine set to 5 volts, and yeah, unfortunately it's still doing the same thing. I thought that maybe the voltage being a little bit low or so might have had some kind of effect on the machine, but after doing some research, it looks as if the machine itself, these M2 boards, have dependency on that timekeeper battery, and when that battery goes dead, all it does is it throws up the error with the 11K OK, and then the hardware error with it. As you can see, the disk drive is trying to read again, but you can see the version is the same here in the hardware error. The unfortunate part about this is that after looking online to try and see if I could find the code for the timekeeper, I couldn't find the timekeeper code for Battle Tryst. It just did not exist. I could find the file, the ROM file, but this thing just keeps going in a continuous loop. But I could not find the code for that timekeeper. And I know if somebody's out there able to make one, I'm sure this will probably fire up, or I'm kind of hoping it would fire up. But yeah, as of right now, this thing is probably just going to have to sit on a shelf until I can find a way to get this thing repaired. If we try to open this thing up, you guys can see it's the original disc. So everything on this thing is original, but yeah, it just doesn't work without that information on the timekeeper. So yeah, I mean, it's come a long way. At least it's turning on now, and I'm getting a screen. I mean, I know I'm getting a hardware error, and I'm pretty certain that it's because of the timekeeper information being bad. But it's nice to know that it's at least doing something more than it was before. Unfortunately, guys, I think this is where we're just going to have to leave it for right now until something happens in the future. But nonetheless, just wanted to give you guys a little bit of a look at the M2 hardware here for the 3DO, basically Konami's nice piece of disposable hardware here. And yeah, that's about all for me for right now. Like always, I'll put up another video here soon, so thanks for watching. Notice how the power fluctuates a little bit here, but yeah, unfortunate. Hopefully we'll get it going soon. Thanks again.